I am Ukrainian entrepreneur. Or you just let me start again. Hi everyone, my name is Ivan Muts. I'm Ukrainian entrepreneur. I work a lot with Sal on a couple of projects with them, and yeah, we have this discussion every month where I share our experience and what we have, what we see back in Ukraine. I'm traveling a lot for my business. Right now I'm in Canada, but I live in Ukraine, and I'm returning back home in around start of November. Yeah, we can start. I get a list of questions from Susan, and
I'm going to interrupt you for just a minute before we dive into the questions. I'm going to see if this works to share my screen. Can you see a picture?
Yep.
There. That's my mom in front of her house with her Ukrainian flag. And now and then when she has pizza delivered, the pizza delivery guy is from Ukraine and wants to speak Ukrainian to her, which she's all Irish, so that doesn't work very well. but just you know, the idea of showing support for the solidarity with the people. So anyway, in my mom's words, though, and she's 88 years old, she says the world right now is just so turned upside down. And I think, you know, for somebody who's, you know, kind of was as a child at the end of World War II and just everything, I just think that's an interesting way to look at our world right now. Obviously, so much has happened since our last call. So with that, we can dive into the questions. The first one being, you know, with the attack by Hamas on Israel 2 weeks ago. And the U.S. immediately said, we stand with Israel. And how is that all perceived in Ukraine?
Yeah, that's a very intensive last month, and especially with events in Israel. And the first week, the news broke up. I couldn't kind of focus on my work. It was so emotionally hard, and it reminded us a lot of how it started in Ukraine and about what occupation looks like. I mean, it's more concentrated in Israel because they just made this raid. They killed, they raped, and then they get back. And we normally have footages like that when we liberate some territories. So we find like beheaded bodies and all of that stuff. But it's kind of more extended in time as we might liberate some area, and we might find this atrocity after that. So I mean, this events in Israel, it triggers a lot of these memories from Bucha and Irpin and Izum and other cities in Ukraine that were liberated last year. Yeah, it's a hell on earth. I know we see it, like we are supportive. Our government declared support right away. Even though Israel never officially supported Ukraine in our war, they kind of they always said they have this sensitive situation, so they don't want to take sides. But it, you know, like it looks to me right now that you know, we have this axis of evil, and it's kind of forming, and it's happening. I don't know if you're in a World War II already or not. When Germany attacked Poland, probably no one thought that's a World War II right now, but eventually that's what history says. So yeah, it's kind of, you can see how these countries, the dictatorship, authoritarian countries, they unite around the idea of destroying Western civilization. And if you look there, if you read their messages and news and government control news, they all say that it's like it's war against America, because they all see America as a top kind of democratic country, the biggest economy. And yeah, they are starting their local wars, like Russia started in Ukraine, and Hamas attacked Israel. But they all have this kind of message that we are fighting this capitalists and Westerners and whatever. So it just proves that yeah, the global situation is very I don't know how it, like, which direction it will lead, but it's obvious that the countries like Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, they kind of they cooperate, and they cooperate a lot. And yeah, what can I say? That's I do believe that we live in like a very historical moment. It's not just kind of one war that happened in Ukraine, or it's not just another war that happened in Middle East, because it all kind of interconnects in some way, and you can see, you know, some evil part benefits from wars in different parts of the world, and they kind of help it happen. So it's yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's very interesting time. I don't know how where it's going to lead, and I believe it's very critical for the global leaders, especially like the Western countries, where we consider to be, you know, we're all part of. I think it's very important to show a strong leadership everywhere in North America, in Europe, in Asia. It's very important to show leadership because you know, crime is organized, and we are not always, and that's the big challenge. So these kind of bad guys, they get organized very quickly, and they have common values. They can find the points to organize themselves and to cooperate very very quickly. And I believe what we see is a part of the weak leadership that was maybe the last decades all around the democratic countries, where you know, there was no so like Russia took Crimea. It was like Germany was very slow in breaking ties because they're very dependent on their energy. So it took them very hard lesson last year to break up ties with Russia. And Germany is heavy in the, like, Germany is a big industrial country. They have all these car manufacturers, and it was very expensive for them to break ties with Russia. But they did not do this. They did not kind of learn their lessons in 2014. They had to learn this more painfully in 2022. And that's a very good example. Like, let's take just Germany and these two dates, 2014 and 2022, which that's what I call a weak leadership, because it was obvious that Russia is not a trusted partner, and they continue extending their dependence on the energy resources. So I think it's very, very important for the Western leaders to finally realize it's no longer like a post-war period where we have an economic boom, where we have like 70s, 80s, you know, lives go on, people get richer, we get available, you know, like resources, and there are not that many wars. It's kind of turning point in some moment that can lead to the bad things, as well as can maybe save the situation if these leaders get themselves together and kind of cooperate. And it's sad for me because we are in a. It looks like Ukraine is playing role of a Poland in World War II, which is not the best role to be. And it's also clear that this war that we have, it touches much bigger geopolitical strings around the world, and it's not just depends on us how we survive and how we win. It also involves a lot of other powers around the world, and that's kind of it's kind of scary because it's a big question mark how the partners will react and how it's going to turn out eventually. Yeah, because it looks more and more like a chess game, like a global chess game now with Ukraine, with Israel, and I'm sure there will be more events like that in the next year or two. If these events not get resolved, like Ukraine and Israel, if they not get resolved, they will just I assume get more and more places like that around the world that might turn into the bigger trouble. So that's how I see this. That's how like Ukrainians are very supportive pro-Israel. We have a lot of Jews in Ukraine, and it was one of the biggest settlements of Jews during the World War II, and there were a lot of like pogroms, and when Germans were here, and they were so there were like all these stories how people were hiding Jews kids somewhere in their basements from the Germans when they were arriving. So I heard the stories from my grandparents, and yeah, so it's we have I would say we were a bit disappointed in a position with Israel government about our war, because they were silent, and we have Jew president, we have a lot of Jews in Ukraine, and they did not give any support. Moreover, they were selling arms to Russia, not now, but after 2014. So Russia is now using this very massive and very dangerous drones that they're actually licensed to them by Israel, and they did this several years ago, and we're now kind of suffering from this kind of Israel drones in Russia. So we're kind of a bit mad at Israel that they are they're so concentrated on their local security. They don't see that it's kind of a bigger picture. And now Russia is actively supporting Iran and other and Hamas and other groups that that attack Israel. So we get a bit of this disappointment, but by Israel reaction. But I would say it's still full support. What happens right now, it cannot be justified by anything. So it's very sad to me to see what's happening in most of the Western cities around the world with this kind of major support for the Palestine. I do understand that. I do support Palestinian civilians, but there is it's very hard to distinguish this kind of Hamas and Palestine, and I see it's no one from supporters of Palestine. They don't object what Hamas is doing, and that's also very, very sad, because maybe Israel is not. There is also like this Hamas operating in Palestine, and it just kind of complex situation, and you see why it's complex also in a lot of your cities when you have this demonstration. So and we see this rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. That's also very, very sad. So it's also one of the kind of steps that we are moving in more chaos, and that's one of the steps that will make harder for world leaders to unite around one idea, because it's hard to take sides in this. Yeah.
Well, going back to the perspective of my 88-year-old mom, when I say, Mom, I just fear that World War III is going to be upon us, and her answer to that is that, well, that will be the end of the world because of nuclear concerns and things like that. And I certainly hope that's not where we're headed. But you're right; it's very complicated. Very complicated.
I think we might already be in a World War II, and it all depends how leaders act. If they kind of figure out how to resolve this global situation properly, maybe it will not turn into like full World War II. But if they mess up, it will turn out into World War II, and then historians will say that it started in 2022. So I mean, there is a chance that it's still not defined. Is it gonna eventually be World War III? But we might be already. If you look at this from that perspective, we might be already in these events. Because as I said, when Germany attacked Poland, no one said it was World War II in 1939. They kind of said it later when they get all the picture together, and they say that's the beginning of the World War II. So I mean, and that's why we have to, we have to look on this from that perspective, understand that, and China is still kind of silent. I'm just curious when they're gonna make their move. From what I heard, their economy is not doing very well, and I don't know how is it good for the global security, or maybe it's even bad because maybe they need to do something aggressive. I don't know.
One of the things when the events first occurred in Israel, and immediately the U.S. started sending ships and such to the the area, that kind of it struck me like how long it took the U.S. to come with support for Ukraine versus just like that. We stand with Israel. Is there fear that now resources are going to get diverted to Israel that otherwise would have gone to Ukraine?
I don't think so. I think I see this message circulates a lot. But first of all, there are like two different wars that we are fighting. And Russia has 400,000 troops on Ukrainian territories. So it's kind of, and the weapons we use and the tools we use, it's different. I think for the Israel, what they need would be more look like some anti-terror war within the urban area. And so I don't think that we will use the same type of ammunition. Of course, it might be to just distract the focus and distract some kind of financial support. But I don't think that. So I still believe like U.S. is the biggest military power, and U.S. only gave us some kind of. So this rocket that we hit Russian air bases like 2 weeks ago, and with one attack we hit 25 helicopters. That's just the biggest loss for Russian air forces since the World War II. Like 25 helicopters, from which like I know like 16 was destroyed and the rest was damaged. So we used these American rockets from 1996. So you can imagine, the U.S. was supposed to kind of destroy that, and we destroyed that in direction of Russians. It's 1996, right? And Russian air defense cannot do anything with that modern technology. So I mean, U.S. has a lot of weapons. All these messages like that our stockpiles are on the rock bottom. It's not true. Like the number of like money U.S. spends on the military is huge. So there is still a lot of weapons in Europe. There's still a lot of weapons in U.S. And I don't think that's. It's more like the discussion, like political discussion. Like we're not giving because we don't have. But I don't think it's going to affect. First of all, because it's not that big war in Israel. This Gaza is just like one city in Ukraine. So it's probably U.S. might be just holding more for themselves because it's not turned more and more like a global conflict. But yeah, from what I heard, U.S. started building more like industries extend to build more ammunition. It started last year. So yeah, I don't think it will be. I think the political situation in U.S. is making it harder to get support to Ukraine, and we see that Biden declared this $100 billion package, and he put together Ukraine and Israel, and yeah, that's what I'm more worried that how the elections influence this decision making in your parliaments. But I'm not worried about like lack of actual physical ammunition. I'm just worried about like this decision-making process and agreement between parties.
Yeah, that's a good segue into the next question that I had posed. But in the meantime, Sue Latshaw has raised a hand, so let's Sue ask her question.
Thanks, Susan. I think that I wasn't sure whether I wanted to contribute this to this conversation or not, but I had written to my senator, who is Pete Ricketts. He used to be our governor, and was basically decrying the mess that's happening in Congress right now. And he wrote me back, and this is dated October 16th, so it was before Hamas happened. And he says, thank you for contacting my office regarding the war in Ukraine. Oh, and the other thing is that Ricketts is, he's a Republican, and, you know, he definitely holds the interest of party above country in most decisions that I've made. I mean, that he's made as far as my viewpoint goes. Anyway, so thank you for contacting my office regarding the war in Ukraine. In February 2022, Putin and Russian forces launched an illegal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, violating its sovereignty and territory integrity while setting off the largest armed conflict in Europe since World War II. This brutal war has claimed the lives of thousands of innocent Ukrainians, forced millions more from their homes, and left many Ukrainian cities and towns in ruins. However, the courage and resolve of all the Ukrainian people have not wavered in the face of Russian aggression. Instead, we've seen a heroic leadership as Ukrainians from all walks of life fight for their freedom and take care of their neighbors. As we speak, the Ukrainian military is inflicting devastating losses on the Russian military, one of our top adversaries, without a single U.S. service member being directly involved. A Ukrainian victory is in our national security interests. Simply put, Vladimir Putin is a dictator and will continue to pursue his imperial ambitions until stopped. If he's not stopped in Ukraine, a NATO ally could be next. Additionally, the world is watching how the U.S. stands by our Ukrainian partners after President Biden's shameful withdrawal from Afghanistan. The Chinese Communist Party poses the largest strategic challenge facing the U.S. in the coming decades. If Putin succeeds in Ukraine, that could encourage the CCP to adopt a more hostile stance toward Taiwan and our allies in the Indo-Pacific, which would cost more than our efforts to support Ukraine. That's why it's critical that the U.S. and our allies continue to provide Ukraine with the economic and military support necessary to defeat Russia on the battlefield and hold Putin accountable. My primary mission as your United States Senator is to make government work with proven Nebraska solutions that are ready for America.
Thank you.
That's a Republican, huh?
That's a Republican. Yes, and I'm Nebraska's about as red as you can get. There's Trump flags flying everywhere across the countryside here.
I honestly don't see I don't think that's something wrong with Republicans. It's just there is like this small group of Republicans that are very toxic, and that they make it look like all Republicans are like that. So
right.
It's
the loud voice is what we hear.
Yeah. I just want to send you the link here in this chat. That's an organization, the open source Intel organization, that they check all the photos and videos from the Russian losses in this war. So if you can click, you can see all the losses of equipment. So that's just for you to understand. They have listed everything, like tanks and aircrafts, and you have image link to image link to all the loss. So you can just see what number of equipment Russia is losing per month, more than many countries have in general. Yeah.
That's great.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Sue. Interesting from the Republican perspective, given everything that's going on in the Republican Party right now and the inability to elect a speaker, which, as I understand it, means that even if money is kind of authorized for Ukraine, it can't really go to Ukraine until all this issue is resolved.
That was the root of my note to his office and my other representative's office, is that you are putting our country at great risk, that you must, fix this, because we're hogtied right now. We're very vulnerable to any kind of attack. And I think that, my belief is that the Hamas attack was part of that, was taking advantage of that vulnerability, is that there was enough awareness to know that the U.S. can't act right now without a Congress.
Yeah, and moreover, most of this money, they're not going to Ukraine. They're just going to the Ministry of Defense to release the equipment that would go to Ukraine. So this money is basically equivalent in equipment. There is some cash that goes in the economical aid. I don't know what's percentage, but it actually goes to our national bank gold reserve for the economic stability. But majority of this money that US and EU gives is basically they just give equivalent of equipment for this money. So when you say it's going to be $200 million, it might be just artillery shells for this amount that being produced in your factory. So it's not like we are getting cash or anything like that. So that's why there is a lot of messages like Zelensky is stealing money and all of that. It's not actually happening because we're not getting that money. We don't need money because we need equipment, right? So if you give us money, we don't need to go and purchase it somewhere, and logistics and time, and it's not like happening fast. You cannot buy 100 armored vehicles and deliver to you next week. So that's why we need ammunition and weapons directly, not just money to go and buy it somewhere. Yeah. And I think, like, if we turn this Republican side, I believe that there is no chance that war will end next year, because Putin is doing everything he can to survive till the potential Trump re-election, because it's obvious that he has a good relationship with Trump. So that might be his like last hope, that if Trump gets re-elected, maybe he can get out of this situation somehow, because it's obvious that Russia is in a bad situation. So elections are in November, so they would do just everything. They would throw all their meat and in the grinder just to get till November and to hope for Trump re-election. So I don't hope to end this war next year. It's probably like Russia would just do everything and they're having heavy losses every day in equipment and in manpower, and they lost all of their kind of regular army, so they're now mainly fighting with conscripted soldiers, which are pretty poorly trained. They cannot do much damage in attack, but they are still dangerous in defense, right? Because you don't need you don't need to know a lot when defending. So I hope there might be a resolution in 2024, but I don't hope it will be next year. Also, it's obvious that because of this political situation, we will not get all the help we need. So we probably will be the help will be here and there. So I doubt we will be able to do like the major push next year or major hit. So it's more likely be postponed to 2025. That's how I see it. But it also looks like a part of U.S. strategy to boil the frog on a kind of slow temperature, because everyone is afraid of nukes, and everyone is afraid of kind of escalations, and yeah. So I think that's within like the strategy to take it slow, destroy them slow, and so on.
And Michael's raised his hand, so we'll give the floor to Michael.
Yeah, talking about the length of the war and the support of with munitions from other countries, I'm wondering how Ukraine's ramp up of being able to produce their own weapons plays into this timetable. What's your view on that?
Yeah, that's a lot of work happening in that direction. A lot of discussion happening that there is still a risk that we will be abandoned by the partners. So we have to build up our military complex, and there are close partners like Poland and Baltic states. They probably will never give up on us because they understand they're just the next layer. Maybe not immediately, but Russia will rebuild within a few years and then come back for, first of all, probably for Baltic states because they're small. It's their support is here, but they're not the big states, but they're supporting us. So we build a lot of factories on their territories. We build a lot of, we build something in our mountains, in our territory, because you need to hide. Russia is shooting all around the country. You need to hide every kind of production very, very well. So I know there is something going on in Poland on that territories, which is good because Russia is not attacking them yet with their rockets. And there is also a lot of happening in Ukraine. We have a couple people conscripted from my company, and they all been conscripted to the tech jobs, tech departments. And they're not telling me much, but from what I understand, there are a massive amount of technology we're building, especially drones, AI, automated stuff, automated mining, demining. So there are just huge amount of tech brains being thrown in that direction. which makes me happy because I don't believe we can win this war head-to-head with Russia, just with the old style World War II tactic, shooting artillery shots back and forth. But we have this edge in drones. We have this edge in technology. There was a report recently that visually confirmed usage of kamikaze drones by both sides, and Ukraine uses like 5 times more of them. So visually confirmed, it means like any video recording of that event happening. So we have the edge. We have we build a lot of this kind of drone technology. It started with buying parts in China and then assembling here. It's now more and more parts are being built here. We still need chips. Chips is not something you can do easily, and you cannot build technology easily to build chips. But they just tens of thousands of units of kamikaze drones, and now it's not just simple ones. It's a lot of tech companies like ours. They invest in that direction and either brains or resources, and they build a lot of AI capability. So Russia historically is very strong in radio technology and jamming. So they jam a lot of drones that flying close to the front lines. And what we are building now, we are building technology to surpass that by pretty much shutting down the network and just using visual image recognition. So drone, when they get close to the Russian equipment and the network being jammed, it's kind of starts scanning the kind of land, and they can fix the target. Okay, there's the target, I'm going for like kilometers, and even if it loses the network or like the radio signal, using AI and image recognition, it is still able to hit the target. So that's a lot being done both by government and by civilian companies and organizations. And to be honest, this year, like last year when war started, we were buying lots of different stuff. We were buying scopes, we were buying armor, we were buying tourniquets, we were buying like different equipment, like range finders, all of that. Now 90% of all crowdfunding goes to the drones, and return on investment is just massive. So this drone, cost of one drone is around $400. We send this to military. They stick explosions to that or some artillery shell or whatever, depending on the size of the drone, and they just hit the target. I can share with you the link of one Ukrainian blogger that he's working a lot with drones, and he posts a lot on Twitter of the results of these attacks. It might be visual for those who are sensitive to that, but if you are not afraid of that, just check videos from this Twitter profile. He posts something, and that's pretty much a lot of these videos are from this drones hitting Russians, hitting Russian ammunition. And return on investment is massive. So one drone $400 plus equipment plus explosion. I don't know how much it costs. Maybe like I have no idea how much explosion, but probably if you're in the army, you have a lot of that explosions. So and they hit like millions of dollars targets. And this is now this is one of the important edges of this war. Russia also invests in that. They also get better and better. China has like direct supply for them, everything they need, so it's very convenient for them. We cannot buy anything from China, so we have to ask our friends in EU, can you purchase me this like 10,000 chips for this type of technology? We send them money, and so China has not closed their sales to Europe, so we can buy from some European friends a lot of interesting stuff on Alibaba and other portals. So that's being done, and government is investing in shells production. We are building our fat bomb, so like long range. We have long range bombs already, and the problem is with scaling. Yeah, There are still a lot of help needed from the West, even if you don't give us money. That's important to be able to purchase chips and purchase technology, because a lot of this complex modern weapon, that it has a lot of electronics, and we cannot buy everything like from China, or you have to have special kind of approval from governments to sell this. So I mean, even if some country is not willing to help us with arms, if they are willing to approve at least the sales of this electronics, that already give us a big hint. And Ukraine was always like the tech hub of Soviet Union. So we built all these rockets that went to moon and all of that. So I'm just very curious if we are building any nukes somewhere in the basement. I don't know. It's probably hard to hide, but I'm very curious because we definitely had the tech. Bigger part of Russian Soviet nuke program was in Ukraine. So we still had like some labs. Of course, it was abandoned like 20, 30, 40 years ago. I don't know. Maybe they were able to get some people from retirement and do some nukes. I don't know. I'm just saying. I know nothing, but but that's also might be part of the strategy. What if Western country turn around? Because for now, for us, it's a genocidal survival war. We have to manage this risk. So if there is something happen, if Trump re-elected, something happened in Germany, UK, they get re-elected, some far right parties, and we suddenly stop supporting, it means that Russia would just destroy us completely. So there should be some strategy for the like for the very critical case, which is not very likely. I don't believe that West will completely turn around, but I believe this risk should be discussed internally, and there should be some, keeping in mind our kind of long history with all that technology. With as I said, most of the nuke programs was done here, and we were the first to send Russian in the space. We have this joke that Korolev was engineer that built their Soviet space program. So he hated Russians so much that he sent one in space, which was Gagarin.
You mentioned that 2 of your team members were, I guess, drafted is a word that comes more easily out of my mouth. Has your firm been approached to do some of this, work with the technology and the weapons and that sort of thing?
We have a couple of people that kind of volunteer in different organizations. We don't do this as a company. We decided to stay focused on our clients, and we invest all our profits. So it was kind of happened organically. Some businesses that has like closer ties with army, so they started doing this right away. We get a couple of, so we help these employees if they have technology. We might send them somehow or some help here and there, but we don't work for government. And now there is a lot of businesses working for government, so it's not like we are hiding or don't want to work for government. It just this is being kind of oversupplied right now, and we see our input much bigger than we continue doing what we do best, earn money and just give them cash, rather than trying to learn new kind of way how to work. Like the whole idea of working with government, you already need to spend a lot of resources just to figure out how to legally work with government, because all the tenders and kind of it's complicated. So we decided not, since we are a pretty small company, we decided not to go in that direction. But we support a lot of organization with money.
Switching gears a little bit, or actually going back to, you said you don't see the war ending before 2025 after the elections. Another kind of impact on the time frame is Ukrainian winters, and this was an area that Sal in particular was asking about. Like, how do you see the upcoming winter impacting the war and just the people of Ukraine in general?
So winter is an interesting period because that's where most of PSYOPs operations start, because people are less lack of sun, people are exhausted. If blackouts happen, it's not happened yet, so they not target power infrastructure. I'm sure we done some protection of that, maybe put something on the ground, but we still have electricity. If you add to this kind of low light period of time and low vitamin period of time, if you add a lot of electricity, it's very easy to push any psyops on people. It's just the perfect timing for put. Psyops is like psychological operations. So when you throw messages in media like, "Hey, Americans abandoned you, so let's sign some deal," and this kind of psyops, they're ranging from like Zelensky is stealing, there is a corruption, these generals killing young soldiers. So they just kind of pushing this from different sources on people that are tired and exhausted, and they want to kind of make people even more depressed. So that's what happened last year a lot, and a lot of people had hard time kind of mentally to overcome the winter because we had blackouts, so we would have a lack of electricity and lights, and then there is like overall it's a kind of hard time for the immunity and vitamins, and then Russia, they know this, so they use this, and we do this the same for them, right? So we use psychological operation. That's a part of the war, but so their idea is to get people depressed. Their idea is to get people not happy with the government, maybe start some uprisings or whatever. So their idea is to put as many kind of these beliefs in a society as possible, because they understand that if people are demanding peace talks, then it's very hard for government to continue fighting. So they just want to influence this from this angle and from this part. And yeah, I would say it's still not working that much, but there are some internal politicians that would happily pick up some messages and spread them, like it is in US, where you can get some message that's kind of helpful for Putin, and there are some useful idiots that just take these messages and spread it around. The same happens here. We still have a media open. We still have a lot of like political debates happening. It's still not a police state, so you can say some stupid things on TV or on internet, and you will not be prosecuted, which some people say maybe should be because of this kind of sensitive situation. There are more and more messages like Ukraine is corrupt because they're not having elections next year. So we were supposed to have elections next year, president elections, but it's kind of against our constitution. And all the sane people, they say, like, what elections during the war? Are you kidding me? Like, it's not safe. People are misplaced. It's kind of hard to do any election. But this message is being pushed heavily by Russia. Like, hey, you say you're defending democracy, but this democracy is not having elections, so maybe it's not democracy. Yeah. And when you talk to like when you talk to like European like this idea of elections, and when you talk to that, but we had this kind of sport game, and our team was playing with your team, and they were playing in Poland, and then say, yeah, but because we don't want to risk our lives and go playing in Kiev. I say, so you don't want to risk your lives, but you want to risk our lives, going to elections, gathering people, and all of that stuff, right? So when your team is playing our team, you're not willing to travel to Ukraine for the game, but you want our refugees to come back to Ukraine to vote or other stuff. So like a lot of these messages are pushed by Russia that. Again, like most of the smart people I'm reading and I'm checking, they say it's even those who oppose Zelensky, even those who say that Zelensky is a bad president, they all say the good thing about Zelensky is that he's legitimate president, and that's very critical in this situation, because when we get half-baked elections with like very low percentage of people voting, and then maybe some provocations happen, and then suddenly Zelensky is reelected, then someone can come from outside and say, hey, it's not really a president. Look, there were like maybe 20% of people only voted, so we don't consider him as a president. So it's kind of very big, an important part that he's the active president, he's legit president. He was elected on a free recognized elections with like 70% support. So it's very important to, like, if we now enter some elections, he's still going to win, right? He has a huge support. He's still going to win. But what Russia is trying to do is they're trying to do like this kind of elections that maybe happen, but in practice, there may be like just 20% of people voting because others are afraid of going and voting. And they will call then that he is not legitimate, right? So they can use this card and say, yeah, they had these elections in 2024, but it was not real elections. Look how few people voted, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a lot of this kind of psyops, psychological operations around these elections these days. And there are some local politicians, they play this card as well because they maybe just think about their political career, not the overall nation and the security. Yeah, so I really hope that these talks will be dropped by our partners. I will not use as some kind of evidence, even though I did not vote for Zelensky back then, and I don't think I will be voting for him again, because I see there may be some other people that I would support, but I still very much in support of his legit president of democratic elections that a lot of international organizations recognized in 2019 as like the best elections we had during our independence, and now going into some kind of not clear situation how to do these elections, how to do the campaign, how to do the free speech, because there is still some media, pro-Russian media, is shut down, and now there will be speculations that, okay, you cannot have completely free speech during war. You have to have some censorship. So yeah, and you see how Russia is using this card, because they never had like a free elections. They like authoritarian state, but they kind of they want to play on the field of democracy, and they want to use democracy as a weakness, and they want to show, hey, you say democracy, go make elections, and then we will use this in UN and other institutions and say, hey, you see, those elections are not that good. They're not different from us. They are the same post-Soviet country. So it's very kind of, I would say, smart how they use this, and they throw this in your face and say, hey, you're not that democratic, so don't support them as well. We're similar, we're brothers.
Yeah. Well, we have a little over 5 minutes left, and I want to open the floor to anybody else who might have a question. Sal?
So, Ivan, the river is pronounced Dnipro, that
Yeah.
is kind of one of the lines. Thank you for pronouncing it for us. Does it freeze over in the winter? I mean, does that help? That's
it's a huge river. It's a huge river. It might freeze in some areas, maybe when there is extreme cold, but it's a huge river. But I heard they already like crossing this in some places. I don't know, like there are not many information. So there is this thing around this river. If you look on the map, there are some areas like national parks. There is a desert even. We even have a desert. It's one of the biggest deserts in Europe. We have desert in Kherson area. I mean, there are a lot of areas where there are a lot of swamp, right? Is that correct? Well, they can cross the river. So, but it's a big river. It's like, it's a huge river. It's like, I don't know, like half a mile river in many places. So it's not that easy to cross. You cannot just make a pontoon bridge easily. So I don't know. There are different operations happening around that river and on the other directions. But it's very obvious that so I assume your question is about this counteroffensive, right, that we are happening. So yes. It's very expensive. Like many people die from this. I mean, it's very expensive to attack now because there is so many surveillance and drones. So you cannot hide anything. Like enemy sees anything. As soon as you go with any kind of vehicle, they can see it. So a lot of these attacks happening by foot during the night, somewhere they try to capture some position. So it takes it takes time, but we target with the precision weapons we get from West, we target a lot of Russian artillery equipment that is not that easy and fast to refill. And many say that this counteroffensive is stuck, but by the reports of how many equipments is being destroyed every day, and yeah, they can get more people. They can get 1 million people more. Russia has a lot of idiots that would go and die, but they cannot build equipment that fast. So equipment is really might be a crucial at some moment. I don't think it will be like a crucial within like a very short period, but it might be crucial even next year with some big breakthrough. So yeah.
And we probably have time for one more question. Denny, it looked like you might have wanted to raise a question. Nope.
You're good. Okay. That's good.
Okay. Well, I think I will just go ahead and kind of wrap up our call today. Ivan, I am never cease to be amazed by your knowledge of history and politics throughout the world, and just your languages. We in the United States, who most of us do not speak even 2 languages, sort of thing. And I easily could continue this conversation for another hour with questions that you're what you shared always raises new questions, but always so fascinating. And I hope that that while the war continues on, we continue to support and want to provide solidarity. And any last comments by anybody else? Sal?
Well, I really appreciate everything you're doing. And as Michael Sawicki, who's on this conversation, always says, Ivan's running a small business. And if you know someone who could support Heuristic and however or refer, they built software for hard zones. They continue to build software for hard zones. The price is reasonable. The work is quality. And I will send you a link. Ivan even made a video saying how great the relationship is. Thank you for putting your URL in the chat box. Because the relationship, and Ivan has never missed one of our talks. I don't know, we're probably on what month?
No, I missed one, last one, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
You still popped in.
But I had the substitution, so I kind of...
Yes. And even when the electricity goes out, he's got generators and backups, and he always makes it. I want to thank you for doing that. We can't even imagine. This last summer, we were in Norway, and we took a ferry boat ride in a fjord, and we met a Ukrainian that was unable emotionally to fight in the war, and he escaped through Russia and paying people. And I just know how hard it must be. And in that conversation, he said, Sally, unless you're there on the ground and you smell the stench of dead bodies and the sounds of them bombarded, when war becomes visceral like that, it changes your relationship with it. And I know, Ivan, you live with it every single day, and we really respect your country and your people. And this Ukraine Flags is about a people to people. It's not about military. It's how, as human beings, we can help each other. So stay strong, be brave.
Thank you, Sal. And I just want to add, like, with this events in Israel. So, like, when this big war happened in Ukraine and in Russia, with Ukraine and Russia, like a lot of Ukrainians will repeat the message that it's not just our war, it's just the civilization war, right? West versus these kind of evil countries. Now is in Israel, it's kind of similar, right? So there is like authoritarian states that want to destroy all the Jews, and they want to do this like very brutally, and they all, like, these all evil powers, they all express like US is on top of that, right? They all hate you, they all say. So I really want you to see these events that it's not just us fighting for us. It's much bigger war. And yeah, we appreciate all the support, but it's also important that people understand in US as well, that this war, that like the war is not that far away. The war can happen, you know, there might be, of course it's hard to attack US because you have 2 oceans, you have 3 oceans around you, right? But the war is not that far away, and US stability, US economic advance is about kind of certain rules around the world. And if these rules get destroyed, US will have to go in war in some parts of the world. Maybe not in our theater in Ukraine, but there are chances that your like kids or grandkids might be involved in some events like that. So I just want you to think about that as you know, as much bigger kind of situation than just war in Ukraine. Is actually we are living in this moment of the time where it can get really ugly very, very fast. And there are these kind of big and powerful countries like China that they wish you that every day, right? That's what they do. Like in Russia, they say in all this in their schools, they teach kids like America is evil, and they grow up like that. And I mean, think about that, and think about that in terms of your leadership, that this kind of global situation, and US cannot be a global power if you shut down your borders and just say, you know, we don't trade with other countries, they have wars, we don't want to support them, so we just keep on our business trading with Canada and Mexico. I don't think it's you're gonna keep your status. So you have to be involved in some parts around the world if you want to be the biggest and the strongest and the richest. And this is kind of not everyone in US understands, and not everyone in US sees it that way. Yeah.
Well, thank you for continuing to challenge our thinking and our view of the world.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.